Welcome, meat tards and Jay's Analysis nerds. I am here with the curator of Jay's Analysis, Jay Dyer. Let me pull up my Skype window here. There he is, Mr. Jay Dyer. Thanks for coming on the show today. So look at them lips. Look at them selfie lips. Yeah. We're going to be talking all things social engineering and diet. We're going to be going a little bit deeper than we might even go. We might even go off the deep end today. But we're going to keep it fun. Jay runs jaysanalysis.com, one of my favorite websites. Highly suggest you subscribe to his websites. It is ridiculously affordable. I think it's like, what is it, $5 a month or $60 a year?
Yep.
One of the few websites. I think your website might be the only one I pay for a subscription on.
Wow.
He gets into some of the real deep esoteric aspects of media analysis, as well as some of the deeper historical context and worldview context. A lot of the information we talk about here has a lot of relationship to Jay's work. I often reference and even use some of his arguments. And, I try to give credit where credit's due. He's been a big influence on my channel. And I appreciate Jay coming on. We're going to talk about all things esoteric today. We're going to talk about social engineering and diet. So, Jay, my man, how's it going?
It's going great. So does that mean that you've allocated the money that you usually put to subscribing to nakedgrannies.com over to Jay's Analysis? You no longer subscribe to that?
Yeah, my VR granny porn. My VR granny porn subscription has been kind of in the back door.
Wow.
Because, I like listening to your stuff on theology especially. You definitely introduced me to a lot of ideas and ways of
well,
explaining.
then we know we're having a good positive effect for virtue in the world when you've unsubscribed from such filthy sites.
Yeah, the VR granny porn. Granny porn, Jay. Come on. All right, so I love it. You got the boomer outfit going on today? The Stay Weird?
No, not really. This is my trademark favorite shirt, Stay Weird.
We used to...
I don't even know what it's an owl with horns.
Nice. Got the Bohemian Grove symbol.
Sort of Bohemian Grove-ish, right?
I got my Dr. Evil prop here. Got my little puppy in my lap. Arrgh. Psycho puppy here. Likes to poop and pee all over the house. So I'll let him go pee. All right, Jay.
You talking about your wife?
Zing bada bing. All right, show's over, guys. Fuck Jay. You're out. No. So yeah, man. Social engineering and diet. You've actually turned me on to quite a few books. I think one of the books that I read on your recommendation was Seeds of Destruction. This is a really interesting book, F. William Engdahl, and as well as from you and on Alan Watt, The Scientific Outlook by Bertrand Russell. These are some of the books that I've been reading, and I definitely reference a lot on this stream and on the channel. But how does diet have anything to do with social engineering and grand scheme geopolitical narratives? How does this tie in?
That's a good question, and we might be tempted to think that it doesn't, right? Who cares? Why does it matter? Well, actually, it's been known since the ancient world that what you feed to your population has a tremendous effect on how the society functions and operates, or doesn't function and operate, if that might perhaps be one's goal. You can go back to the time, for example, of Plato, and actually in the realms of veganism, I've noticed over the years, Plato and Pythagoras are heavily misused. Pythagoras, for example, does not teach necessarily veganism or vegetarianism. It's very unclear exactly what his doctrine was. All we know is that he forbade beans. I don't know why, farting or something. I have no idea. But he forbade beans. And then when Plato comes along, who's also of the school of Pythagoras, in the Republic, there's a laughable section, laughable in a dark comedy way, where Plato says that the slave class should eat wheat and grains. Okay. Now, this is appropriated oftentimes in a lot of apologetics and articles for veganism and vegetarianism, as if this was an argument from the wisdom of the ancient world for vegetarian. But Plato is actually saying here in this section that this is what your idiot, Dumbo, slave worker, wage slave class is going to eat. Don't feed them meat, right? So there's a lot of misappropriation going on with like the ancient philosophers, but what we can gather from that is that it was known by the power structure, even in the ancient world, that you could in part control and manage the population through their diet. And again, that's explicitly stated in Plato's Republic, because what the Republic is about is how to create the quote ideal society. So there's a lot of good in Plato and a lot of bad in Plato, in my view. But one of the things he does say is that you can control the population, kind of keep them kind of dumbed down like fat livestock, if you only feed them grains. Don't let them have too much access to meat. We don't want them getting uppity. We don't want them getting any fancy grilling ideas. We just give them the bread, give them the donuts.
Wow, that's insane. All right, so Plato literally in the Republic. Do you know which section of the Republic this is in, where he actually recommends soy boy slave feed?
I did pull it up here. I have a talk on the Republic, and I go into that when I do. I actually have, I think, 9 lectures on all chapters of the Republic, but I can read what he says here. This is, I think, it's the section where it's the dialogue between Socrates and Glaucon. It's about 50 pages in to the Republic, and the work people will live, I suppose, on barley and wheat, baking cakes and meal and kneading loaves of flour, and spreading those excellent cakes and loaves upon the mats of straw, upon clean leaves. They themselves will make merry, and they will have children, blah, blah, blah. And we'll be able, basically just saying that we'll let them reproduce to a certain degree, and they'll sort of stay as this working class. He says, but if we don't want injustice to take root in our city, he says, then we will control the amount of meat that they have, he goes on to say. He says, because if we allow the lower working classes to have access to a lot of meat, to a lot of indulgence, he says they'll get into this attitude of the elite of wanting to be indulgent and wanting to have luxury and so forth.
They'll get all uppity. They'll get all uppity, and they'll start demanding.
They'll get uppity.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, that's just one example from the Republic, but it's been known for a long time. And so then when you fast forward up to the modern world, to the Malthusians, when you get to like Malthus and the different English social theorists who were radical Darwinists, they kind of continued this idea that the diet of the population had to be controlled. And so, for example, in the UK, especially during Industrial Revolution period, when everybody had it really shitty, and they, it's basically like something out of a Dickens novel for everybody. They were also in the situation of having to have very poor restricted diets. And there's actual evidence that the UK government did this at times on purpose. And for example, during wartime, they would experiment with what would happen to the population when you could have enforced rationing. Because in wartime, it's a lot easier to pass laws that say, oh, well, you can, we have to ration the meat for the soldiers. Wage slave people can't be eating your beef jerky. You got to have eat your beans, right? So this has been known for a long time, been in place for a long time. But if we come up to the modern period, I'm glad you mentioned Bertrand Russell, because in his elitist treatise, he talks about that very thing. He talks about controlling the diet of the masses. And the way to do that is through regulations, through diet injections, injunctions. That includes, inoculations, things like this. And Bertrand Russell says it in every one of the books that he writes about in terms of this. It's not just there, it's also in Scientific Outlook. And when Huxley wrote Brave New World, he was writing about what Bertrand Russell said would be the real world. So it's not fiction, it's a fictionalized presentation of what this group of people, this radical Malthusian group, wanted to impress upon the lower classes. Now, when you come to the modern world, just to bring this full circle, more in the last 30, 40 years, in the 70s, the Tavistock Institute and different groups had, like the Stanford Research, had done papers like Changing Images of Man. Mm-hmm. And in that, they talk about the revolutions that will come in the next few decades for human diet. So that's when we started seeing I think it's during, is it like the Ford era? I think you would probably know more about this, but I think under Ford and Carter, you got this food pyramid that said, oh, you got to have all these grains.
Yeah.
That's the base of your diet.
Yeah.
And that all came under the same period when Changing Images of Man was putting out this idea that there will be a revolution in diet that will go along with social revolution to reorganize society away from independence, away from organic, away from people having farms, all this kind of stuff, into green austerity. And even, yes, back then, they even knew about smart cities. They were already pre-planning the ideas of smart cities. If you say, that's crazy, I would direct you to Disneyland. Did you know that Epcot is actually the future city of tomorrow? And it's all about Agenda 21. It's
Yeah, wasn't DARPA involved in actually the funding and the design and development of Disney and the procurement of certain plots of land? You know, I mean, and I'm talking about
the CIA. The CIA was. The Pentagon was directly involved. Siemens Corporation, Monsanto was involved. All the big usual suspects.
Monsanto was involved. I'd never heard that. What did they put, like a placard in "It's a Small World" or something?
Well, if you go to certain rides, if you recall, actually I went recently because I'm gonna do a video on it. Different rides are sponsored by different corporations, and so, for example, there's a ride called The Land, and it's this propaganda about like vegetarianism and not eating animals, and it's sponsored by Chiquita Banana.
Oh, Chiquita Banana. Now there's an interesting little connection there because isn't Chiquita kind of the predecessor of the Dulles Brothers and United Fruit Company, which was heavily involved in geopolitical struggles and the Banana Republic?
Yes, it's essentially a CIA company. Exactly. Absolutely.
Wow. So, all right. So you mentioned changing images.
When you ride this ride, they basically take you through this floating thing that shows you, oh, in the future we're going to have everything growing in like high rises, and it'll all be greenhouses and all this stuff. Wow. And they're like, don't kill animals and don't have farms. That was the old way of doing things. Now we're going to have, genetically modified superfoods in the future that, will take care of all this. It is old. And if you think about it, it makes sense because Disney, I mean, even though they're not completely vegan or vegetarian, they serve meat at Disney, obviously. But there's a lot of Disney films that have, for example, demonized hunters, demonized
Bambi.
Meat eating.
If you eat meat, you hate Bambi. I mean, this is the thing. Like we always talk about the vegan worldview and how it's so people have no idea. These people that are protesting for animal rights, most of them have never touched an animal in their life, other than maybe a cat or a dog. I mean, these are people who've never been out in the so-called nature that they're trying to defend. And this nature that they're trying to defend is this Disneyfied concept in their mind. It's like they're believing that nature is the freaking Lion King, and that if you're eating meat, you're basically killing Bambi. I mean, it seems like the whole worldview is heavily influenced through Disney. I got a picture of Miley Cyrus. She's a famous vegan. Miley Cyrus went vegan in 2015 after her doggy died, and she realized the suffering of animals. And now she what does this come? Something about the she helps poor people through the Happy Hippie Foundation. Miley Cyrus, the Happy Hippie.
You would think. I mean, it sounds cartoonish. It would sound like comedy or something, like a skit, but that's real. I mean, it's unbelievable because what happens with a lot of these pop stars is that they will actually advertise themselves to become the face of campaigns and movements, because there's actually a lot of money in that. So it may not even be true. Miley, I mean, she doesn't seem too bright, but so I wouldn't be surprised if she is a complete vegan. But it also could be the case that she's just the face of this movement, and it's all PR.
Yeah, no, I doubt that she's really a vegan. Like, I mean, you think she gives a shit? Yeah. Doesn't she ride on giant hot dogs or something in her freaking live show, or like use like a hot dog phallus dildo or something? Is that
she
vegan?
humps hot dogs on stage? Yeah, I mean,
is that considered vegan? We'll have to ask the vegan activists in the audience if that's considered proper vegan.
Yeah, what's the vegan moral code on humping hot dogs? Is that
well? We do know from 2 episodes ago that Pokemon Go is not vegan. Can you see I'm screen sharing with you so you can actually see the you see the screen share? No.
Yes, I see her.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. I think it's easier.
let me add this. This was kind of the crowning glory on my rant here, and this is the famous globalist social engineer Alvin Toffler in his 1975 book Ecospasm, the Ecospasm Report, which is out of print, by the way. He's the author of Future Shock, Third Wave. He's one of these Rockefeller Brzezinski type.
I've heard of Future Shock. I've heard of the Future Shock book, but I've never read him.
And he says in Ecospasm Report, let me see, I got the quote here. He says, I anticipate the sudden rise of a religious movement in the West that will restrict the eating of meat and beef, and thereby save billions of tons of, and thereby saves billions of tons of grain and provides a nourishing diet for the world as a whole. So back in the 70s, quote doesn't really make sense. It may be mistyped, but back in the 70s, the point is that Toffler, just like the Stanford Research Institute, just like Tavistock, had been writing papers, white papers, experimental projections about how social engineering could happen. And it's actually, what I find fascinating about his quote is that it's not just like, controlling everybody into some sort of green austerity smart city. He talks about it connected to a religious movement. So it's actually tied to the, earth, consciousness, new age, all this kind of stuff is directly connected to, he says, the coming vegan revolution. And he talks about it as a revolution. And that's relevant because when you talk to a lot of these vegans and vegetarians, and I've had some debates with these people, for them, sometimes they are a little more consistent, and they do take it into the religious sphere because it's very difficult actually to find out on what basis these people really believe that this is wrong. Because when you start talking about something being objectively, morally wrong, a violation of some objective standard or taboo, that usually leads to, metaphysical questions, because that suggests that there's some objective standard. That's a metaphysical, ethical, philosophical question. It's really hard to have that if you don't have some kind of theology. So, most of the time, I've never heard a coherent answer from any of these people as to why this is objectively wrong.
Yeah, no, I haven't either. And it usually comes down to, well, you can feel it. And then they'll start talking about in their street theater things, they'll say, well, would you slit your dog's throat? Would you slit your dog's throat and would you eat your dog? And I think, well, if my dog bit my son, I'd slit my dog's fucking throat.
I was going to say, you should just be like, yeah.
Yeah, if my dog hurt my son or daughter, I would slit his throat. And I actually, it's funny. And then they'll put up a picture of a dog and a pig. And they'll say, one is food and one is, you kill one and you feed the other. There's no logical consistency here. And I think, well, that's absolutely ridiculous because I feed my dog because my dog will kill an intruding human who wants to come and take my goats, which I keep to kill and eat myself. So it's like, these are...
I just like to play the demon-possessed psychopath, and I just say, no, I just derive pleasure from, excruciating pain and torture that I get from killing animals regularly. And they're like, they're aghast. But then I'm like, but why is this wrong?
Exactly, because why?
I want to know why. I mean, you may not like this, but we're not talking about, taste and what people like or don't like. Why is this wrong?
Absolutely. Why? Why do you believe that this is wrong, and where do we derive objective morality from? Because it's really funny. You see some of these debates that you'll watch online are just hilarious to me, because you'll have a non-vegan debating a vegan about the morality of veganism, and they very often start out the entire argument by both agreeing that all morality is relative and that there is no objective basis for morality. And this is what the funniest thing to me is. There's this dude, Vegan Gains. Have you ever seen this guy? He's like, he makes vegan hate videos and talks about smashing babies.
He debated JF that I debated. Yeah.
Yes. And he debated JF, and it was totally incoherent. Him and JF. It was just I don't get how anybody could finish watching that debate. Although you and JF's debate was fantastic. I thought that was great. If there is a computer in space and it assembled itself out of nothing, and answer me this, Jay Dyer. That was beautiful. It was hilarious. But yeah, so
I will stuff a baguette down your throat.
my sausage baguette between my legs will procreate and make more babies because that is the meaning of life. Because we need to keep babies. So yeah, vegan gains. He started out one debate, and both people are agreed that there's no objective basis for morality. And then they debated the ethics and morality of veganism for an hour and a half after that. I turned it off after the first 2 minutes, but it was the most absurd thing I'd ever seen. So you know what? This is probably a good transition. We got a nice free-flowing conversation form here. Let me pull up one of these vegan street debates that was really popular online a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And this was a debate between Millie the Millennial and yes, everybody's favorite millennial, Millie.
I'm actually going to go into boomer mode now and just start hating on. I'm going to literally enter into boomer mode and
hate on millennials.
Real.
What? Let's give your best. What's your best boomer hating on millennials riff? Just for the moment, while I pull up this video.
Well, I'll have to hear her because I don't know where she's coming from, but
okay.
I'm sure I can come up with something because I've had my fill of boomer hate throughout my life. So yeah, it's pre-programmed gigabytes of it into my head.
All right, so let's see here. Vegan videos. I'm still figuring out the OBS, guys. Please forgive my
I think my buddy Chris might have debated her. She might be the one that my buddy Chris debated one time.
And
you sound.
This was a. Oops, where is? I'm gonna find this video. I got the video pulled up.
Is she the vegan?
Millie the Millennial? No, she's from Infowars. Remember? I think she's.
Oh, Millie Weaver. You're talking about Millie Weaver?
Yes, yeah, Millennial Millie or something. Millie Weaver. She seems like she's a nice person, but I don't know anything about her. I can't really watch her videos.
Well, there's like a millennial girl who's a vegan channel who debates people too. I can't remember her name anyway. It's not coherent.
Yeah. Yeah, both sides are kind of incoherent here. I want to get your take on this because I've really enjoyed a lot of your debates and how you bring it back to worldview. But I'm unable to pick. I'm trying to find this damn video. I've got the video pulled up, but let me just add a new window here for OBS. Window capture. So yeah, I think it's really funny. One of the common techniques in the street debates is they'll appeal back to emotion a lot when they're talking about objective morality. And I think emotion is a really good way to manipulate people into making decisions that they think are absolutely moral decisions. Where would you say we derive morality from? I mean, obviously, it's not a short answer question, but where do we get morality from? And maybe in the secular world, in the world that these people are coming from, where would you say that what would you say their argument would be on where morality comes from? Or would they even have one?
Well, most of these people that you're talking about, and this is typical for most people that you debate, period, will rely on emotion. And this is actually a fallacy. It's called the appeal to emotion. And you'll hear this all the time. It's a very common propaganda tactic. In fact, if you recall the Bertrand Russell book that you mentioned, he actually says in there to his fellow globalist elite, he says, don't try to do logic and emotion, especially not with the masses. H.G. Wells, I just covered 2 of his books as well in my globalist book series. He says the same thing. Don't try to argue and use logic with the masses. He says just use emotion, use music, use pop culture. That's how you tap into, literally, he says, like, have a bunch of smoke and mirrors and a big band or something. That's how you can change the mind of the masses. Wow. And when supposedly people are debating, especially on YouTube, this is all you see is emotional appeals. Yeah. And so this would be something like, I always go back to Jesse Ventura, and he always said, I don't believe in God because you're weak and you need a crutch if you believe in God. That's an emotional appeal. That's not an argument. That's a fallacy.
You're weak and you need a crutch. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't tell us anything about what's true or false to say that somebody is weak because they believe something. I mean, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but that doesn't really have anything to do with whether it's true or false. I mean, a lot of math nerds, right, are very weak people most of the time. They're weak, but that doesn't mean that math is false because weak people are in the math club, right?
Yeah.
It's just a bad argument. It's stupid. So most of the time, what's going on in these debates is emotional appeal fallacy, especially, and ad hominem. Obviously, that's the other most well-known fallacy. Well, what you're saying can't be true because you are a loser.
Yeah.
That's a
well, I like how the online debate thing, it's so funny now because you can, I'll throw out some pejoratives, I'll throw some slings and arrows, I'll insult people now and then, but it's never my argument. But then the retort will be, oh, well, you just insulted me. That's an ad hominem, so clearly you're wrong. And it's like, you don't understand what ad hominem means. If my argument is, you're a fucking idiot, and that's why I can't believe anything you say, that's an ad hominem. If I say, well, you're an idiot because your argument is completely incoherent and you're self-contradictory the entire time.
Right.
My argument is you're self-contradictory and incoherent, and I throw in that you're an idiot just for fun for the audience. So that's not an ad hominem.
No, I insult people all the time, and people will be like, that's an ad hominem. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's because we're not actually having a debate, because if I'm insulting you, then it means that you're not worthy of a debate. so we're not going to have a debate.
Yeah.
So you can always tell if I'm doing an ad hominem that you're not worthy of debate. But when it comes to the general sphere of YouTube, I think most of these people don't know what they're talking about. And you hit it on the nail on the head when you said worldview, because basic philosophy, basic worldview goes back to the idea. Worldview studies goes back to the idea that we all have a governing set of presuppositions that determines how we read or understand the world. This is what we mean by worldview. And generally speaking, everybody has a philosophy or a worldview, even if they don't know it. So this is boiled down to the three branches of philosophy, which is ethics, metaphysics, and epistemology. Sometimes aesthetics is thrown in there as well. And really, those are just questions about how we know what is right and wrong, what things are real or not real, and what things are true or false. And so they're basic questions, but most people don't think about, how do we know those things? Like, how do I know what's true or false? What beliefs do I have that I can justify? How do you justify a belief, right? Those are the questions that philosophers ask. But when you enter into the realm of trying to debate, you're entering into the realm of the philosopher. So it does help to have a basic idea of logic, of basic fallacies, these kinds of things. And that's how you win debates, right? But it's not just a matter of winning a debate or something like that. Logic and these kinds of things, our worldview, actually affects how we live. So if you're not able, for example, to, in the realm of health, sift through true and false claims and true and false arguments, you're going to be led into some BS propaganda that could have detrimental effects on your body. You know what I mean? So it's not just a question of abstract winning debates. I mean, it's like a real question of being healthy, of flourishing, of having a family, of doing well in life.
I mean, having fertility, like even being able to have kids. Because, I mean, you look at the sperm rates just plummeting. You know, I mean, in this book, it talks about, speaking of sperm rates plummeting, the talk about the so-called Terminator Seeds later on in this book, where I think I marked it somewhere here. He talks, killing us softly, there it was. He talks about this company, Epicite, where in 2001, Epicite announced that they had a spermicide-producing corn. And this company was bought out as a company out of your former home, San Diego, where I lived as well. And they were bought out by another larger company, and the Pentagon and DARPA did trial growing tests with this, and then nobody ever heard about it again. So, I mean, we are seeing there is a thread of the intentional development of crops to sterilize human beings, whereas, there hasn't been an overt implementation of these crops, but we do have the Pentagon doing tests with these things, and then, of course, corn, wheat, and soy being the main nutritional sources that were fed in these Disney McMonoculture foods. So, I mean, there's...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's all kinds of things like the Terminator Seeds. You can look at genetic modification in relationship to fetal tissues, and the flavoring issue with Genomics, the company that uses the fetal tissue for both vaccine adjuvants as well as flavoring for companies like Pepsi and Kraft and this kind of stuff, if I recall.
Yeah, and that's true. And this is a cell line that it started out from aborted fetal cells, and like it was one abortion in the 1967 or something, and they culture these aborted fetal cells to put in all these vaccines and these. So I mean, if you're wherever you stand on vaccines, I mean, whether you think they're good for health or not for health, maybe we should be asking what are in these vaccines, and is this okay in our worldview that we're being injected with aborted fetal cell culture lines? I mean, to me, this is really important.
Absolutely. And when you look, I mean, whatever one thinks of the Vatican and all that, it's interesting as well that some people have dismissed that claim about the fetal cell tissue and vaccines, but actually the Vatican had a ruling on this because it's real, right? So they wanted to tell Catholics whether or not they should or should not get these vaccines. And if I recall, the Vatican ruling was to avoid the vaccines that use the fetal cell tissues. Anyway, I mean, if the companies are willing to do that, then what else are they willing to do? There's no holds barred. It's mad science. It's the evil. It's the most evil conception of how to manipulate nature and the biosphere that you could think of. And the deeper that you dig into this, you see that these people don't have any moral qualms because they just believe that the world itself is a manifestation of random chaos. It's basically a giant abortion. The universe is a giant abortion. Therefore, it can be tinkered with and tossed away or destroyed or degenerated as anyone sees fit. And when you read the globalists like Jonas Salk or Bertrand Russell, especially if you pay attention to the Jonas Salk talks that I did about survival of the wisest, he's very explicit there, as well as Arthur Kessler's book, Ghost in the Machine. They're both very explicit about the fact that the scientific priest class, and this includes the people at Monsanto, it's not just people in your public university science.
No, those are the low-level guys. Those are just the low-level frock wearers.
He says that the scientific priest class has the duty and the right to modify, genetically alter nature, and thus control and depopulate, because they themselves are the instantiation of the highest form of evolution. That's what they say. That's
which is supposedly it's just random. There's no creator. It's just all random chance and bouncing billiard balls. And there's no God except, after the primordial goo turns into a shrew, and then that turns into a monkey, and then that becomes God. So, it's this weird philosophy and people don't understand the implications of this. And they're, you must be anti-science if you don't believe in Darwin. I learned about Darwin in school, you fucking idiot. You get this just really insane pejorative retort where it's like, no, I grew up thinking that these are possibilities. I didn't grow up with any theological framework. My parents were, very opposed to any religion. They were, grew up an agnostic, but really an atheist family. But this never made sense to me as a child. Was like, this whole Darwinian philosophy thing always seemed totally skewed. And, my neighbors who were like, Protestants and stuff, I always thought they had kind of a weird conception too. But it's like, it was so hard to reconcile what I was being taught in school with like what I saw in the real world and experienced internally. Here's a quote from Bertrand Russell. I think you'll like this one. This kind of sums up this is Technique and Psychology section from the Scientific Outlook. He says, without going into metaphysical subtleties, one may say that reality is that which is generally accepted, while fantasy is that which is believed only by an individual or group of individuals. It's like, what the hell does that mean, dude? Reality is that which is generally accepted. That doesn't make any sense. This is this is not just some guy. This is the guy. People worship this man. People talk about Bertrand Russell as if he's the most intelligent human being ever in the world.
And in the 20th century, he's supposed to be the greatest logician since Aristotle.
And if you read this book, it's retarded.
It is, and in fact, I noted in my video talk on it, there are about 30 places where he contradicts himself, and when he defines what science is, it's so elastic as to mean anything and everything. So that book is more of a propaganda book, is what you've come to find out, as are H.G. Wells's books and most of the globalist books that I've covered, about 15 or 16 of them now. They're all propaganda books, but they all have some of the same patterns that govern the whole through all of them. So you can go back 100 years up till today. Somebody like Jacques Attali in Brief History of the Future, who I covered, they're all going to say certain things the same. So they're all going to talk about the need to have a single planetary structure that governs and rules every aspect of life, a technocracy. They're all going to talk about the absolute truth of Darwinianism, and this giving the justification for the scientific priest class to kill everybody and to experiment on everybody. Because that's the other thing too, is that it's not just, oh, they're just going to kill everybody. Rebecca Lemov has a great book, The World as Laboratory, where she presents this worldview from the technocrats of not just killing, but also experimenting. So I think there's justification for things like 5G. That is being rolled out as a giant experiment. Back in 1973, in Between Two Ages, Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote in his book that they would roll out the ELF towers, and that those ELF towers would be able to manipulate human moods, attitudes. They could shift the frequencies and cause people to be agitated or docile. He wrote about that in the 70s, and I've covered in many articles I've written, military PSYOP documents that talk about the possibility of doing these things as well. So in other words, health is crucial to this, and we live in a giant lab experiment. A lot of the political movements of the 20th century, Bertrand Russell, for example, he says that we experimented with socialism in certain countries. We experimented with Bolshevism in Russia. We experimented with Fabianism here and there. So political ideologies can be an experiment for social study. DARPA can do social experiments on people through VLF towers. That's who developed those. Yep. All of these things can be experiments. And if you find that hard to believe, just consider the fact that the people behind this are mad scientists, and they write books about doing it. They write books saying, Jonas Salk says, let's experiment on mothers and their zygotes. Through vaccination.
And Bertrand Russell writes about this too. Bertrand Russell writes about, we got to figure out how to tamper with the baby before it's even born.
Yes.
We're just biologically determined. Behaviorism is the three great. I think he says you got Galileo and Darwin, and then you have Newton, Freud, and then Pavlov. These are the greatest scientific minds in the world, according to Bertrand Russell.
Ever. Right.
And it's just, it's when you actually read these guys' stuff, it's dumb shit. Like, it's such low level stuff that gets fed to the masses, and then it pumps us up with pride that we're somehow these highly intelligent, evolved creatures. And if you don't believe this, you're unevolved. And veganism is the natural evolution. This is inevitable. That we will go above we will stop, and then they bring in metaphysical concepts like suffering, right? So we're going to stop suffering. So it's like when you ask them, what is suffering? What is suffering, vegan? Oh, well, it's the unnecessary pain. And okay, well, what is pain? And it's it's just circular restatements of the thing that you're asking about. Then they'll say you're playing word games. You're just playing word games. It's like, well, no, you're using words and concepts that you won't even define. You're just playing in these emotional games.
Right. And that's where we figure out that, as you pointed out earlier with worldview, that none of these things operate in isolation. Right. Nothing that we believe. And that's just inescapable. That's the way that the world that we live in is structured, such that there's nothing that I believe, nothing that I interact with, nothing that I experience, nothing that we debate ethically or whatever that doesn't have a context in the midst of a whole worldview. So, for example, I wrote an essay that people could check out that makes this argument that you can't, for example, believe something, say, ethical, that doesn't also necessarily entail something metaphysical and, by extension, epistemological. So, for example, if I believe that it's wrong to eat meat, that necessitates a lot of metaphysical beliefs about reality that I might not have intended just by saying, I believe it's wrong to eat meat. It also necessitates a bunch of other things, like, for example, that the external world exists, that it's separate from me, or this or that. It entails all kinds of things. It entails that there's this thing called meat that's out there objectively in the world.
Or that there's a thing called wrong or right.
Yes, it entails the idea that I know I have an epistemological certainty about something being right and something being wrong, and I have a way to adjudicate that. So, in other words, all this stuff is assumed, and people just don't think to or know to ask those kinds of questions. They just hear something on a YouTube video, or they saw it in some propaganda thing that, oh, it's wrong to cause suffering or something like this. Well, I would say it's wrong to cause unnecessary suffering. Yes, that's not a good idea. But it's not always wrong to cause suffering. For example, if, like you said, somebody busts into my house and they're gonna maybe rape my girlfriend or something, like, it's not wrong for me to kill them and cause them suffering. Right? That's a justified action, and I can justify that within the context of my worldview as a whole.
And the definition of veganism now, they say, is the unnecessary causing unnecessary harm and suffering to animals is what they put on their Wikipedia now. Now, they're constantly shifting these, the vegan.
Shifts, right?
Yeah. So, but what you just said is you metaphysically would agree with veganism. You don't think that unnecessary suffering of animals. So when you're gonna eat bacon, you're gonna eat a steak. That is unnecessary suffering of animals when you could have beautiful, enlightened, lab-grown meat. You could have beautiful soy burgers that are just as much, they have no saturated fat, and they're just as much protein because they're soy.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And the reason that's unclear is that unnecessary is also a bit of a vague term. So, for example, something could be unnecessary, and one person might conceive of that as you only could therefore have meat when it's some like extreme luxury, like once a year or something like that. In fact, if you look at the UK think tank, that's one of these top globalist think tanks planning the future for austerity and the green agenda, called Plandopolis. If you look up those videos on YouTube, those are a real YouTube or a real think tank future. They talk about rationing meat to once every year on your birthday. So look up the Plandopolis video for the smart city. And by the way, this all ties into the smart city stuff. And it's like this stupid British cartoon, and this chick's like, "Oh, did you know it's your birthday? You get meat once a year on your birthday, but you can't have it any time else. No meat throughout the year." It's really retarded, but it's total propaganda. Anyway, so if you say something's unnecessary suffering, what I might mean by that is that if me as a human being, if I want and believe that it's a right and I should eat meat frequently, then that's not unnecessary. That is necessary, and I do eat. I believe. But
who's to say? But look, the animals are suffering. There are animals on these farms, and they're crowded into these little small areas, and they're fed corn, and these poor animals are suffering. And you don't want to suffer yourself, so why would you want someone else to suffer, i.e. the animals? That's like a common argument, right? So they want. Right. What do you see there? What kind of a loading?
Well, I would definitely say that there are problems with factory farming and with big corporations being involved in all that, and those are manifestations actually of the exact same worldview that these people hold. They're just on a dialectical different view. So some people who have their worldview would just reason that, well, these are just meaningless evolutionary abortions anyway. It doesn't matter whether we cause them suffering. So in other words, I would just still go back to the main point that you need a reason or a basis to say something's right or wrong. And the materialistic, atheistic, corporatists that do the factory farming have the exact same worldview as the vegan evolutionary. I used to know this guy, for example, who left theism back when he was a teenager. And he got really into what's the PETA? He was like with this PETA dude, and he infiltrated Tyson Chicken. Uh-huh. And so he got like known in the PETA community for some Tyson Chicken video. Yeah. Well, then he went and got deeper in with PETA, and he found out that this was when the PETA had that scandal that they were running, like the dog killing thing. I don't remember exactly what it was, but PETA was involved in some kind of animal killing thing. It was a huge scandal like 5 or 6 years ago, right? So this just broke this guy's worldview. But I had debates with this guy, and years ago, before veganism was as popular as it was now, And I would ask them like, why do you believe? And it was always like, because of evolution, we are brothers and sisters to all of these animals,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore it's wrong to eat the animals. And I'm like, so evolution in your mind dictates that the animals are your older brothers and sisters and cousins, so you can't eat them. But it's the same evolutionary process that dictates the corporatist view of total predatory social Darwinism, which says that I can freaking eat humans if I want. I mean, they're arguing now, the corporate elite are arguing that cannibalism should be true. So what we're going to get basically is two sides of an idiot retard coin. Of one side saying that cannibalism is fine, there's nothing wrong with eating humans because we're all just evolutionary abortions anyway. And then the other side of the idiot coin, somehow with no basis, arguing that, well, the cows are our older cousins, and so we shouldn't eat them. They're both stupid. They both have no basis. They're both totally
So is slime mold.
They're both
So
wrong.
are single-celled organisms and bacteria in the soil. We shouldn't kill
Exactly.
them. We shouldn't kill a worm. We shouldn't kill anything. I got some PETA ads pulled up. I screen shared with you. You see them? We got the situation. Got too much pussy can be a bad thing. Spay or neuter today. And he's holding a kitty cat. And then you got Jenna Jameson. Pleather yourself. So a porn star wearing pleather for enlightenment. You know, I mean, this PETA is one of the most ridiculous organizations in the world.
Do you remember what I'm talking about when they got caught like running a dog killing facility? Like it was crazy.
I do remember that. Yeah, so PETA's really into the euthanization of animals as well. So they're they're really into euthanization. Here's Waka Flocka. I don't know who Waka Flocka is, but damn, he looks good naked with a chain in front of his dick. Ink, not mink, for Waka Flocka. I guess he's like a rapper with some really awesome tattoos.
Yeah, he's a rapper. Isn't it funny because some cutting edge organic doctors, I think Dr. Jack Cruz, he's actually been talking about how ink is bad for you, like all the tattoo ink is bad for you. I'm not saying that everybody, but that it actually can block the sunlight that you need. I thought that was an interesting.
Yeah, I had Jack on a few years back, a few times.
Oh, okay.
Jack was an old friend of the show. We don't speak anymore though, Jack and we're not on speaking terms, but he's an interesting guy. He definitely I would agree with him that tattoos definitely probably not the best thing for health. Skin absorbing sunlight being an important nutrient that we all need. You feel better when you move down there to the coast?
Oh, that's part of the reason I moved here, man.
Yeah.
There's so much geoengineering in Middle America, and for example, in Tennessee, when I was a kid, I remember I grew up in Tennessee. Then my dad entered the Navy, and we moved to San Diego for a long time. Then we moved back to Tennessee. When I was a kid, there was sunny days all the time.
Yeah.
And now there is literally, it's like just nonstop geoengineering every day. And I bet in Tennessee we get maybe 20 to 30 days of sunshine.
Wow.
And it's just like total storms, overcast, fronts nonstop.
Yeah.
And
people don't even know what that. People don't even understand that there's the people can control weather now, and people have been writing about this since like the 1930s. You got this. I'm sure you know this article. This one's Alan Walt turned me on to this one. Cosmopolitan from 1929 February from our friend Lord Birkenhead. And it's just essentially all about how we can control the weather, control all human breeding. It even says in here we're going to feed people processed cellulose, and meat will be rationed, and agriculture is going to be abolished. So, it seems that there is this common thread of using food as, a social engineering tool.
Yeah, in fact, I think it's Scientific Outlook. You just reminded me of that. In Scientific Outlook, Bertrand Russell says that meat will be restricted to the elite, and he says that a processed fake meat substitute will be given to the masses. I just remembered that because I tweeted that out back when I read it and got a lot of retweets on that. But I was kind of blown away because I didn't think that even back in the 30s they really had this conception of of like processed fake meat to be created.
Yeah, here I'm pulling up I got my tab here. I'll screen share with you so you can see as well. I've got a million things pulled up. I don't know if you can. So we got Cargill and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Now, I'm sure Jay's familiar with Cargill.
Yeah.
They're basically like a Monsanto type corporation. They're on board with the green. It's all green and sustainable. And then there's let me pull up this. You got the Beyond Burger. So the Beyond Burger is like this. The vegans are just melting over the Beyond Burger. It's the most amazing thing to have. You watch like Klaus from Plant Based News. He does this little cute smile. And he talks sort of feminine. He like waves his hands. He talks about, oh, the celebrities are all going vegan. And Plant Based News is just amazing. And if you look at who actually funds, you've got who's behind the funding of Beyond Meat. The top funders.
It'd be like Fortune 100, right?
Dude, it's Tyson Foods and General Mills. Look, Tyson Foods is the top, and the Humane Society and General Mills and Bill Gates, Cleveland Avenue investment firm. It's just insane.
All the people that say you need to die.
Yeah, and Tyson Food, and the vegans are acting like this is like, this is the vegan revolution is here. This is Trotsky's rolling in with his. I guess that they wouldn't really understand this, but this is kind of like Trotsky rolling in with his banker gold from New York into the So I mean, we're looking at a lot of these big corporations are also funding the same thing. So why would they do that? I mean, these corporations, I thought they were bad. Why are they funding your so-called green revolution?
Yeah, it's exact same as the climate stuff. You think, oh, the evil oil companies, they're against the green agenda. They're against the climate change. No. If you look at who funds climate change, it's the top oil companies. It's BP, it's Shell. I've documented this in their white papers. They're behind. It's the Fortune 100 that runs this stuff because they're all on board with the exact same plan. Most of them.
So how can we? Is there a way to actually, to get this across that, the green revolution, like where does this come from? I thought that this was a good thing, right? Green, it sounds great. Save the planet, green revolution. Where are the roots of this green revolution stemming from?
I found it in my. Certainly, you could go back to just ancient paganism, obviously, but in the modern world, I found the earliest quotes in Marxists and in H.G. Wells and in Russell. I'm sure you could probably dig up some other people to talk about it too, but those are the main guys that really came up with the idea that even prior to the Club of Rome's, First Global Revolution, which I think is from the 70s, or maybe it was the 90s, I forget, but I think it came out in the 70s and they redid that document in the 90s. But far before the Club of Rome, you had H.G. Wells saying that we need to concoct this idea of an environmental movement. And that's a good way to unite the planet because they wanted to find something that every human being shares in common and have everybody united under that common so-called goal, right? So what do we all share? Well, we all share the environment, right? And it sounds plausible. Oh, yeah, let's all be concerned with the environment. But the same people who are talking about supposedly being concerned with the environment are the exact same people who push the mad scientist view, let's fuck with everything and screw up all the genetic stuff and let's tinker with everybody's RNA and DNA, even to the point where I came up with, I heard Alan Watt mention this years ago, and I went and found it. I dug up the actual papers where in the 70s they talked about how they could, through chemicals, things like BPA, that kind of stuff, they could reverse the RNA in males and females. So they could make males more feminine and females more masculine.
Right.
There's actual papers by the CIA on this. It's called. You have to look up the papers by Dr. Holger Hayden, and this was at the CIA's mind control conference in the 70s in San Francisco.
So talking about
Isn't that crazy?
Like what's it called? BPA, but they're estrogen mimicking chemicals, right?
Estrogen, yeah, chemicals, right.
That's so crazy. Yeah, no, and it's just ridiculous. And then you saw, after these papers were written, after these white papers were written, you saw the massive introduction of plastic bottles for water. Everything came in plastic all of a sudden.
Yes.
Very interesting.
And you get that 70s diet that we talked about earlier of the food pyramid, and you got to have all your grains, and don't eat the old diet that your granddad did of bacon and eggs and this kind of stuff and steaks. Now you got to switch over to eat a bunch of damn cereal, Kellogg's and Fruit Loop crap, right?
I think you made this point before that Kellogg's, Kellogg actually was really big into the eugenics movement, right? Like the guy who started out cornflakes was a member of the Eugenics Society, and it was all about population control and population reduction. These are the same people that started funding transgenic seeds. Like this book here is really good.
Yes.
I think people should definitely check out Seeds of Destruction. And if you can debunk some of the claims this guy makes, go ahead, try and debunk it, because this guy lays out a pretty good argument here for transgenic movement being he documents it all, and he's got a great bibliography there. But it's like the Rockefeller Foundation put like hundreds of millions into the transgenics thing.
Well, you mentioned Tyson Foods. I didn't know this until like the last couple of years, that actually the history of Tyson is that the reason they became dominant, just like Walmart, is that they're based in Arkansas, and Arkansas is where Walmart is based as well, and that's where the Rockefellers are based. And in fact, it was the Rockefellers that helped both Sam Walton and Tyson Foods achieve preeminence by both their government contacts, and in the case of Walmart, through their contacts in China. So it has nothing to do with Sam Walton like picking himself up by his bootstraps. It was actually all engineered by both Rockefellers and Rothschild. There's actually been really good books written on this about the history of the elites in Arkansas. And you would think, oh, Arkansas is just total backwoods bumpkins. No, that's where the Rockefellers have their home base. That's how they raised Walmart up to the status of megacorp.
Wow. Yeah.
And Tyson Foods is another thing that was aided by the Rockefellers.
Tyson Foods, they were also kind of tied in with like drug running allegations before as well.
Yes, because it ties to the mafia, absolutely, and the CIA
and Clinton as well. So they were giving massive donations.
Mena, Arkansas. Yep.
The Mena circle jerk, they call it. I think in my head.
And you say, if you think that sounds crazy, now you can understand why Hot Springs was a big mafia retreat. Did you know that?
Oh, that's interesting. That makes sense now.
Yeah, I've been there twice. There's a mafia museum there, and the whole town is like a kind of a cheapo, lesser version of Vegas tourist attraction.
Okay.
But there's hot springs, and literal hot springs where the mobsters used to go and just rest in the baths. But they would go there because it was a hub for not just mob, but also big Rockefeller interests.
That's pretty amazing. You wanna let's transition here back into. I started earlier going towards this, but then we went all over the place after that. But let's look at the street debate with this guy's a major vegan activist. He's really big in the vegan community. They worship him. The Earthling Ed. If you want to go get some water or something, I'm
gonna grab some coffee. I'll be listening.
Yeah. I'll prepare the video here. So guys, we got Earthling Ed. Earthling Ed is one of these major the British. I don't even know what to call him. I call him a hacktivist. Just essentially a fake activist. Jerking himself off, trying to make himself feel worthwhile, make himself feel like he's part of something bigger. And a lot of the things that we've been talking about lately, we've been talking about the vegan movement as an extension of kind of the moral relativism and nihilism that pervades our society these days. And people are looking for some sort of alternative cult. People are looking for something to give their lives meaning. People's meaning have been taken from them. People's meaning and people's foundation of what they believe has been robbed from them. And this is by design. You can read papers like The Changing Images of Man from Stanford Research Institute, where it talks about completely reorganizing and reworking man's vision of himself, man's beliefs about what he is, man's beliefs about where he comes from. So we've got this video here. Pull up this video. We've got Earthling Ed, who is one of these vegan hacktivists. We've got him debating another kind of one of these modern media figures, and her name, considers herself, I guess, a right-wing person. I guess her name is Millennial Millie, and she worked for InfoWars, for Alex Jones over at InfoWars. And regardless of what you think of Alex Jones, right? If you think that he's a terrible person, he's so bad, or if you think oh, he's a shill, he's this or that, he's a government aide, whatever your view on him is, you got to understand that the deplatforming of Alex Jones, the simultaneous deplatforming of this guy from every single social media platform in the same weekend is pretty alarming, especially for channels like ours. I mean, we're here, we like to have a good laugh, we like to make fun of vegan activism, we like to make fun of moral relativism, and kind of the talk about big picture stuff, but you know, channels like this could easily be deplatformed at any time. And so we got Jay. Jay showed up. He's back here. He's got his coffee. He's ready to check out. Let me just screen share with you here. I'll share the screen and I'll pull up the video big here. And we'll just interrupt anytime and I'll pause it. I just want to see what you think about this this debate. This isn't even the full debate. Let me find the real debate, actually. Full debate. It's too long, but we'll skip around in it.
Essentially, the vegan ideology can be used as a vehicle to usher in globalism and globalist policies. Now, as innocent as veganism may seem, if you actually scratch the surface, the more you'll find when you start questioning vegans and their lifestyle, it's a lot bigger than just a diet.
Okay, I'm going to skip her introduction because I find that both sides give kind of incoherent arguments in this. And so, yeah, let's see.
Ban something, but if we encourage people to stop their consumption, then naturally the amount that's raised and produced will be dropped until it's no longer relevant in society.
Let me ask you, what moral code are you using to say that it's wrong to kill animals for meat?
The same moral code that we have towards each other, which is that we're alive, that we suffer, that we have pain, and that we want to live. And because of that, we realise that we shouldn't harm each other. Now, the animals are alive, they're sentient, they're conscious, they can feel pain, they can suffer just like us, which is why I use the same moral code, which is just let them live if we can, which of course we can.
So, would you say that you're using the same code when you say that we shouldn't kill each other to apply that to not killing animals?
I think it's not necessarily about it being the same code, it's just the fact that we don't have to do these things, and because we don't have to, there's no moral justification for it because it's unnecessary. So it's no matter what species the form takes.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Notice he's done two different things there. On the first, I mean, I understand he's kind of speaking on cuff, but he's already made two flaws there in his reasoning. One was that he started by saying that it's unnecessary. We don't have to do this. But he had also just said earlier that it's wrong to cause suffering. Now, these are two different claims, two different arguments, and neither of them work. First of all, again, Millie Weaver asked him what was the moral code, on what basis, and he didn't give a basis. He just simply said, again, because it's wrong. We shouldn't cause suffering. Why should you not cause suffering? Because we shouldn't harm another being, right? I mean, this is the typical circular argumentation that you always hear. And again, we don't know why it's wrong to cause suffering. In my worldview, it's not wrong because God gave us as human beings the right to eat meat. The New Testament makes this very clear. Paul says that nothing that God created is unclean. All things can be received with prayer and thanksgiving to the glory of God, right? We can eat anything, it's fine. Not anything, obviously, but anything that's edible.
So then maybe he would say, well, that is an outdated philosophy. I'm from the Enlightenment rationalist philosophy, where there is no objective proof that there is a God. So what say you to this? Like mine is based on humanism. If we want to be human beings, we need to reduce the suffering of animals and live in a sustainable way, because it's unsustainable, and we have to reduce the suffering of men too. So we have to live sustainably.
Yeah, that's called being arbitrary, because in that worldview, in his paradigm, in his belief system, there's not really any reason why it's wrong to do these things. It's just him being arbitrary. It's him setting up an ad hoc thing of what he says is it's wrong to cause suffering. So his next justification was something different, a different claim. At first it was wrong to cause suffering, then it's because it's unnecessary. Well, number one, why is it wrong to do something just because it's unnecessary? In other words, it's unnecessary for me to have a Nintendo, but I can go play the Wii. It's not necessary.
It's unnecessary for me to be alive. You're unnecessary. You're not necessary. I'm not necessary. What is necessary?
Yeah. So it's just constant ad hoc, constant arbitrariness, and in logic and philosophy, You say, you were joking there about being a son of the Enlightenment, a son of the revolutions. Well, those people usually talk about being consistent in their logic, and if you're going to be consistent in your logic, it's not wrong to do something that's unnecessary. It's not wrong to do any of these things that he says is wrong.
Right, I guess in that philosophy too, everything is natural and everything is permitted, right?
Everything.
So it's like if you can kill everybody and be the top Darwinian Ubermensch vegan by killing everybody else, then what's wrong with that? It's permitted by nature in their philosophy. There's a lot of people they'll conjure up nature, but there's no what is nature? That's another.
Well, yeah. When I look at the natural world, I see predators and prey. So, on what basis do you arbitrarily say, well, if a being is, if an entity or a being is sentient, quote unquote, and you notice he shifted that as well when he described that. He said, if something is alive, if something is sentient. Well, now wait a minute. These are two different things because a lot of things are alive that aren't sentient, and that's again back to metaphysics. Because if I distinguish between Bill Cosby and a screwdriver, right? Bill Cosby, well, if it's a screwdriver that Bill Cosby makes as a drink, it's going to have something in it. So maybe I should say screwdriver. If I say Bill Cosby is different from a rock, right, it's because I'm assuming that he has this metaphysical quality of sentience, consciousness, which actually is a debated philosophical thing. There are plenty of Darwinian materialists who don't believe there's such a thing as consciousness or sentience. So he's all over the board. He doesn't know where he's going.
Yeah. So I think really what it comes down to with a lot of these vegan hacktivists is they don't really care about being consistent. They just care about appearing right in the final edit of their video, which is what Miley does as well in this video too, which I guess is what they're trying to show here in Activist Journeys or whatever this is. They're adding all the unadded footage that Miley cut out to make herself look like she won the argument. I thought both ended up looking ridiculous because neither one of them really got to the core of the assumptions that are being assumed, I guess. But yeah, you want me to start it again? We'll see what his next argument is.
Yeah, you're making a great point, though, real quick. It's just that a lot of this is virtue signaling. A lot of it's just a way to try to look like I care the most. Look how great I am because I care so much. I'm a caring person. I'm a Care Bear.
Where do you think this Care Bear? Where do you think Care Bear hacktivism comes from? Why do you think this is so big these days? You get people, everybody's. People make a diet cults too, like non-vegans too. You get people out there I've been critical of a lot of people in the movement. The reason I don't really even talk to Jack Kruse anymore is because we've had clashes over the way that he treats his following and he treats his audience in a cult-like manner, elevating himself as this guru. We see this a lot. And why do you think people are so hungry for these weird little cults and identities?
It's what you said earlier, people looking for meaning. Because traditional meaning and the way that we would normally derive who we are, family and where we come from and so forth, that's all been obliterated and replaced with a creepy, university corporate way to purchase your identity through another form of consumerism. So you can just go to Whole Foods and you see all this stuff there, and so that's now your new identity, is the fact that you've chosen to be a part of this corporate Fortune 100 veganism, and it's all promoted. It's all promoted from the top down. That's where it comes from. So these guys, these low-level dummies on the street, they don't know any of this. They don't know where this comes from. They don't know that this is a corporate plan that filters down through Whole Foods and the local university, and the professors who work for the think tanks and the foundations who are promoting this stuff. They brainwash these retards into believing this, and they go out and be the foot soldiers, the evangelists.
Yeah, no, and it seems like so many people are just really ready to do that. At the drop of a hat, they're ready to join whatever movement comes their way that gives them some sort of meaning. And it's like you don't see an anti-war movement anymore. You don't see people out there protesting the modification of their weather, the destruction of their soil. But you see people protesting the poor pigs at Whole Foods by singing a song on their guitar and acting real cute and dressing up like Pocahontas and going to Burning Man and getting in a big pile of humping flesh. I mean, it's just like this.
Yeah, I mean, the soy boy is the ultimate New World Order new male. I mean, that's what they want. They want that. They want the, you know, how do you conquer civilization but simply by weakening their males? It's very easy.
We watched this video the other day. Have you ever seen the masculinity is dad video? Have you seen that?
Yes.
Oh, beautiful. One of the most beautiful pieces of internet hilarity
There's a really funny one too of these liberal, I think they're like Jesuit, like gay Jesuits. And I think it's called a letter of apology to women. Have you seen that?
No, it sounds great though.
Oh, dude, you gotta watch this. This
sorry.
is like 3 minutes and you can tell that they just literally, there's like 2 gay guy Jesuit guys who like are reading a letter that they wrote. It's a propaganda thing, and then it's supposed to be like 20 other men that are off of the streets, and they just bring them in to apologize to women, and it's obviously like just like crackhead dudes that they brought in and paid them like $20, and it's like, yeah, I want to apologize to all the women ever for everything I did wrong, and then it cuts to like and I want to say that I'm sorry for the years and the millennia of oppression that men have caused to all women. Look up the letter of apology to women.
I'll look that up later, man. Thanks for the suggestion. Let's. I can maybe do a half a minute of Earthling Ed, but I think it's just more of the same, right? They do the same circular argument. Millie makes some almost decent points a few times. Let's see what she says. Let's see what her retorts are.
So let's talk about the plan and aspect of if you were to try to move toward a veganism diet for the entire global population.
Right.
How would that be sustainable? And as far as what we've seen regarding agriculture use in with plants, vegetables, crops, and everything like that, are you aware that the amount of arid land, farmable land that we have in this country couldn't necessarily sustain everyone in the world having a vegan diet?
But that's not actually true, because the majority of the crops that we grow, we feed to livestock animals as it is. And in fact, all the grain that's used in this country alone could feed 800 million humans, which means we could eradicate world hunger with just the grain that's fed to animals in this country alone.
Well,
It's the single biggest thing, or the single smallest thing we could do that has the biggest impact is going vegan. And all these other issues we do have to address: single-use plastic, greenhouse gas emissions from other sources, absolutely, crude oil use. But it's
Sorry, so we got the quantification of all. I mean, I guess vegans. If you're an 18-year-old vegan and you've watched Cowspiracy, you know everything about the quantification of all life on this planet now. Like you know how much of everything there should be and could be to feed everyone.
It reminds me of Maoism, because Mao understood that and Mao was funded by Yale and the CIA and the Western elites, but the skull and bones men of the West. But Mao knew that the way to change society was to grab the energy of the youth, and they know that the youth are idiots. You're an idiot when you're 18. You're an idiot when you're 19. Even when you're like 25, you're still halfway idiot, right? So, right. I mean, so that they know that age group is very ignorant and very manipulated, or easily manipulable, and that's why they use them to leverage society and to try to brainwash them, so that when they get older, they're just the next phase of the revolution.
Absolutely. It's fine. I was trying to find this page on in this book, Ecoscience. This is another one of these ridiculous books. This is John P. Holdren and Paul Ehrlich. Paul Ehrlich's kind of like Al Gore, right? Like you know about Mr. Ehrlich. There was a Mao quote at the beginning of one of these chapters, and it's of all the things in the world, people are the most precious. And it's the beginning of the chapter about population control. They quote Mao.
Wow.
So I thought that was a really interesting connection that they made. These are
well, they love that Mao view, because I'm sure David Rockefeller wrote the 1979 New York Times editorial from a China traveler, where he praises Mao as the ideal state. Like Maoism is the ideal form of how government should be run. And when you see hipster culture, I like that independent article you've got there. They've tied it to a movement and I would say look for it to, as Alvin Toffler said, to become more and more religious, because these people are going to realize that they got to have some way to kind of to base these moral claims, and it's going to be shifted into some kind of new cult. And I know it sounds crazy, but everything is going crazy right now. I mean, these vegan people are they're probably going to literally start thinking that they need to kill people in order to save.
They do. They already say that. They already talk about, like, you know, they'll leave comments on my videos all the time. I hope you suffer and die, and your children your children, the arteries get clogged from all the suffering food that you're eating. Feeding your children meat is child abuse. It's just like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yes.
Like, if your
I've
parents...
I've heard there's a libertarian dude, I forget his name, and I wouldn't even want to name him anyway, but he does a whole vegan show, and my buddies Chris has called in and debated him, and he literally tries to say, you are the moral equivalent. You are Jeffrey Dahmer. You're a serial killer. If you eat meat, you're the same as a serial killer. Talk about deluded.
Are you talking? Well, you said you didn't want to say the person's name, so
well, I don't remember his name.
I don't want to disrespect if you really don't want to say his name, but are you talking about that Mark Passio guy?
Oh no, it's not Mark Passio. It's a lesser. No, I would.
That guy is so ridiculous.
Yeah, I think Mark Passio is ridiculous. By the way, so Ice Poseidon came on my stream yesterday. He's one of the big IRA, and he said you should challenge Mark Passio. I'll say right now, I'll challenge Mark Passio to a debate.
Yeah, on here. Do it on here.
We'll do it on this channel, yeah. If he wants to debate, if this gets out to Mark Passio. But no, there's another dude who's like a lawyer, and he sounds like he's a lawyer. He's from New Jersey, and he talks like this. I'm a libertarian. Let me tell you about veganism. Let me tell you something about veganism. You're a serial killer. You're Jeffrey Dahmer. You're Jeffrey Dahmer if you eat meat. I don't remember this guy's name.
That's a great accent, man. That's proper. You could that's really good. I'm impressed with the accent. Let's go to something else here. All right, so I got some other I've just got a slew of vegan videos. YouTube gives me the greatest vegan suggestion videos. You know, praise the algorithm for just knowing exactly what I want to see. But you know, we've got some examples of like vegan cultism here that I think you'd find interesting. Here's we got my boy Nature Boy, Peace Reflection. He does all this like astrology, and you know he's all about, you know, if you melanate it, you got to move to the equator, and the white man is Cancer.
Is he a We Was Kangs dude?
He's kind of like he's more like I is God dude, which we'll see here. Yeah, he bypassed We Was Kangs and went straight to I is God. So let's check him out. Melanation.
Oh no.
Yerp.
What's going on?
He's got broccoli growing out of his head, dude.
Put a list of great teachers of today. And I've got some flack back, and I want to make some clarity about it. Right now, it's very important that we understand this, and I want to say this clearly because I don't think people truly understand what's going on here. And that's okay.
Here comes the reveal.
Teach you.
He's going to teach us.
And so I put this list of teachers out as I want you to know that I am the Most High. I am the most highest consciousness you can come to within this plane. To you, I am God. I am your Jesus. Period. There is no greater teacher than I. I just want to let you guys know that.
I mean, this is...
How many thumbs up does he have? Does he actually have thumbs up?
He's got 131 thumbs up there. 131 disciples. Yeah. Let's see the top comments. Okay. Latifa says, if you're truly in tune, you will understand that you are I. When you speak, it's me talking to me, LOL. Some reflections. Look for a response. Rather than receiving the message, I am God. $, facts. Oh, man.
So, and this guy is like a vegan dude. He's
yeah,
like
fruitarian.
Also...
He's like level 5 vegan, which is fruitarian. You only eat fruit.
Fruitarian? Wow.
Yeah, dude. It's like the highest form of consciousness.
I remember Mike Adams at one time had a podcast thing, and he was playing my podcast on it, Talk Network. That's what it was. It was like 3 years ago. And one of the other shows that he had on his podcast network was the banana. She's like the banana woman. I forget her name.
Freely the banana girl, right?
not the famous banana girl. This is a different one.
Okay.
But she argued that all you needed to eat was bananas. Like, just eat bananas. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Well, for spiritual gains, obviously. Like, if you want to be super freaking spiritual, but I mean, I guess being super spiritual also includes dying really quickly, though. If you do that, and farting and pooping a lot.
That's being a good Malthusian. I mean, don't you need to get out of here?
True.
Quick, by the way.
You got to get out of the way for the crickets. You know, you got to, because all animals are the same, and my little 2-year-old son is the same as a cricket. So there's a lot of crickets that need to be born. But that's Nature Boy. Check out. I found this other one. This is his new intro. He's kind of upped his production value. Check this out.
Is this his commune?
Yeah, he's got a commune in Costa Rica, and people give him all their money to come. You can come if you're white too, and you got money.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
this is his.
This is his cult, dude.
His commune's nicer than my damn resort.
That's what I'm saying, dude. Like, we're trying to spark off the. We're gonna be the unmelanated cult. Me and Jay are gonna start it, and you got to you eat nothing but I don't know. What can we've got to feed them fruitarian diets so the people are real dumb, right? This is
dates.
Dates.
What's a weird fruit?
Dates.
Just something obscure.
That's pretty spiritual. Dates just grow off a tree, and you could plant the seeds afterwards. So he got a group of people to come down to Costa Rica with him, and they got kicked out of Costa Rica,
wow.
and now they're somewhere else. And he got kicked off of a plane for smelling too bad, and he said that they were racist. Check out that guy's little wiener poking through his skirt here. I never noticed that. That's pretty funny. You can see his winky. You see your winky, melanated man. I mean, so it's like his cult.
Maybe that's not his ding dong. Maybe he's sneaking sausages through.
he's got a hot dog between his legs. They really
he's sneaking a little bratwurst, a little beanie wing down there.
So it used to be like you had to be melanated to be spiritual, but they changed it from melanation to carbonation, I guess, for some reason.
That's so he could get big white girls down there.
He's got a couple white chicks. He's got some white chicks, got some white dudes. So
they look okay.
Mm-hmm. Some lady died. She moved on to the other world after she came and gave him all his money and stopped taking her medication to go on the fruitarian diet. And yeah, this guy's really interesting though. He talks about how pedophilia is like okay and so it's weird stuff, man. But this he's not demonetized. Wow. He's not deplatformed from YouTube. But let's see what he has to say here, Mr. Jay Dyer. I think you'll enjoy his introduction here. Very theatric.
Who are we? Carbonation. What is carbonation?
He's got a gong.
Conscious. Who are you? Angels of the Most High, divine angels of light. Who am I? The Honorable Master Teacher Nature Boy, Commander-in-Chief of the Earth Plane, my highest self.
Who am I?
Queen Eliana, Commander-in-Chief of the Earth Plane, my highest self. Where do you come from? The highest frequency of the sun. And what is your mission? To collect the elite and prevent the weak. Free flag shoot! I love myself.
What?
I love myself. Did you see how he spells self with a C-E-L-L?
Reflection. He got his bag jumping. My reflection master teacher stunning. OG master teacher got his jump. He got his bag jumping. Master teacher.
Yeah, I think his.
Chosen angel sparklers blow the trump.
Okay, that's carbonation, man.
Wow.
Dude, this is how far this shit's going. This is
mind-blowing.
This
so,
is the
did he say he's the nature boy?
Nature Boy, Master Teacher Nature Boy is his name. He's the Master Teacher. I guess he used to.
So he's trying to pull from Ric Flair.
Yeah, dude. He's like Ric Flair mixed with a little Jim Jones. He's got it all, man. He does this thing in the beginning of his videos.
He's Ric Flair mixed with Jim Jones mixed with Mike Jones.
Mike Jones. Damn. Dude. And then he makes these videos like God is the devil and stuff. I mean, it's so interesting to me.
That's Manson philosophy.
Yeah, dude. For sure. Check this out. He's like.
Of existence. So as long as you're saying that white people are the devil and hating and you will never leave here, you don't know love, you will never leave here. I liken consciousness as a house, right? Let's say this house has different rooms in it, and the different rooms are the different planets. We talk about going to Mars, but you can only go to Mars through consciousness. Again, let's say we're in the living room.
Dude, I mean, it's so crazy when you start watching some of this stuff. It's like astrology and diet, and it just all mixed into one. And the internet allows anybody to create a cult like this.
He's got that Marlon Wayans hair too. I can't get over his hairdo.
It's like Sideshow Bob mixed with Marlon Wayans. It's pretty cool. I mean, obviously, he claims he's God.
I'm convinced. Where do I sign up?
I guess you got to have some money first, and
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. And here, check this out. We got this other. You'll like this. This kind of, we watched this last time on a stream. I thought you'd like this too. It reminds me of these. Well, I'll see what you think about it.
There's a rainbow around the moon. Have you seen that video?
No, it sounds amazing.
Oh, what? Look up that one. There's a rainbow around the moon. That's a good one. This has some corporate production value behind it.
Yeah, dude. The first line was, "We will all be born again." It's like this. It reminds me of these, like...
So it's becoming a cult.
Yeah, dude. It's like these Protestant youth group commercials, but it's for fruitarian festivals. Fast forward a little bit. Get the the dynamic Osho meditations and shit. You know, they got it all. Tatted up, edgy vegans, smoothie. I'm gonna fart so much today. We'll all be born again as vegans.
I'm sorry, I'm getting hungry, but I keep thinking, like, where's the meat? Like, where's the main course? Thanks for the appetizers. Where's the main course, dude? Or what they're doing, like UFC, like fruit
Yeah.
UFC.
Yeah, Fruit FC. Look at the guy smiling. He's like, "I love you. I'm not mad at you. I love you. I'm not gonna hurt you."
It's like a girl fight, like UFC for fruitarians is like that. They're literally doing this.
Oh, dude, that's the best shot right there. Somebody gif that. I want a gif. Somebody make me a gif.
Yes, that's your future as a fruitarian vegan. Yeah.
Damn.
DJ Kiwi comes in.
Oh man. So you can buy these. Oh damn! Look at that chick. She's going to Burning Man next year with that when she turns 18.
But that thing was hot. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's a drug-free raid with just a little MDMA. Just a little bit of MDMA on the down low. This is I don't know, man.
I'm blown away, dude. I mean, I feel like I've been sheltered. I haven't seen this craziness going on. I mean, this is. I was like thinking in the future they'll make this into a cult. It's a cult.
Mm-hmm. I think in the last 5 years, a lot of this has really gone down. You know, with internet entrepreneurship, I think that's the new driving force of the fractal cults. Check this guy.
And let go of my sentences, flow into the inner worlds, man. I'm a dimension spreading, opening up portals to another universe. Black holes slipping in, getting blessed.
He looks like a white Arian Henderson. He looks like.
But you hear he's being blessed by the gods and goddesses.
He's a freestyle fruit rapper. Wow.
This festival's turned more into a community building workshop and little utopia. The whole thing is how can you connect with people more deeply, see the friends you love, and meet new ones and inspire each other. So I come for the community love and the spiritual growth, which I get every single time, no matter what.
What's it like being blonde hair?
Bananas and kiwis, fruits
awesome.
and frisbees, bananas and kiwis.
And meet amazing people. We have such a good community.
Do you got that guy so not creepy?
It's awesome. I feel like I wouldn't come back unless
This guy's really beta. I'll let him kind of halfway almost massage me for the video, but afterwards, will he please stop touching me?
Dude, look how small this poor girl's shoulders are, too.
This guy's his massage is like.
He doesn't want to break her fragile chicken bones. Look at this poor woman, dude. She's so emaciated. Like, imagine, like, my daughter is bigger than that lady. That's so sad. Wow.
Yeah, like people. So yesterday, so I'm making the banana ice cream, and yesterday someone was telling me they're like, I don't know what you did, but like the
What is
banana
this?
ice
Is
cream
this some
tastes so much
place?
better
Is
today.
this
And I was like,
a
oh,
compound?
Yeah, and they're so
Come here?
in Woodstock, dude. It's Woodstock Fruit Festival. You don't know? Every year.
Oh, so it's a yearly festival.
Yeah, they can't do this year round. Whoa. Whoa, dude. What?
I was
Oh,
skeptical until I saw their pro transvestite. Now
I'm there. I'm totally there. I just got so many. And then it's like another, here's just a recommended one. Who's the daddy? Like some vegan lady who feeds her kids a vegan diet, and like the reveal on who the daddy of her new baby is. I mean, it's just like, it's all so representative of this thing that I've been trying to articulate in so many ways. And I know that you do such a beautiful job of articulating. Yeah, man, I mean, it's just, hey, let's see what she has to say.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It is finally time to do a dad face reveal. Now, a few videos back, I did say that we were going to have some fun with this. So today, we are going to be playing a game called Who's the Daddy? The way this is going to work is each of the children have been given a photograph of a potential dad. Obviously, one of them is genuine and 5 of them are imposters.
5 of them are just guys that I had sex with a few times during my pregnancy.
Is this real?
Dude, this is freaking real, man. This is our world, bro. I don't know what to do. It's like
is she part of this fruit commune?
She's not fruit commune, but she's a vegan YouTuber, big vegan YouTuber. Tara's family.
So she's just a lunatic.
Yeah, no, this isn't like she was impregnated at the fruit commune and Nature Boy is going to be the father. But this is.
What if the photographs were different fruits?
Is the banana the father? Is the watermelon the father? Who's the father?
We have labelled the dads. Dad 1, Dad 2, Dad 3, Dad 4, Dad 5, Dad 6. We are not going to be revealing the name just yet. So each child will show you a photograph of their potential dad and give you a bit of background information.
Well, that child's already got no hope.
It's so sad. I don't know what. It's like I don't know whether to laugh or cry with some of these videos.
If you guys could play along and in the comment section below, just leave us a comment.
Yeah, I don't know. So I mean, I'm not gonna watch the rest, but that's basically the the premise of that one. You got the proverbial fatherless Western child whose mother, you know, I mean, like she's in the. I don't know if that's their whole house.
These people are fruits. They're fruit cakes. It's appropriate that they're fruitarians because they're fruit cakes.
I mean, it's like, what can people do to like not get trapped in these cults and not get caught up in this madness? You know, like we're always talking about creating a coherent worldview. And obviously the worldview that I adhere to involves a creator, involves an objective, right and wrong. And we use, hashtag eat meat, make families. That's a big part of the message too. But it's like, shit, man, this is just madness. What the hell?
Well, one of the sad things about this is that you kind of get what you choose in this life. So, for example, if you choose to go down the route of not caring about what's true or not loving the truth, you kind of invite your own destruction. You kind of put yourself into your own box or prison, and that's just the way the world is. So, these people, at some point they've I mean, I'm not saying that everybody who's in a cult or brainwashed, it's always their fault, but a lot of people are in the situations they're in because they, choose not to be rational. They choose not to be sensible. logical, etc. And you get what you get what you pay for. For example, a lot of boomers, a lot of normies, they don't pay attention to what people who talk about paleo or people who talk about eating organic say. I had family members who didn't listen to me 8 years ago when I was telling them to go in that direction, and now they're suffering the consequences. So.
Yeah, no, I actually absolutely agree, man. It's like I think a lot of people out there have a lot of friends and family that they wish they could change their perspective, but I mean, that can be detrimental to your health and well-being as well, to put so much energy into what other people are doing. It's like really what we can do is control our own home. Like we got to get our own home in line before we're trying to go out and tell other freaking people what to do. You know, kind of the take the plank out of your own eye type thing.
Sure.
But at the same time, that doesn't mean, you know, you can't critique culture, that you can't look at the degenerating culture we have and say, this is ridiculous and nonsense, and we need to not take part in this if we want to be coherent and have a future. You know, I mean, I got a lot of people like, oh, you're just hating, like, you're just a hater. Just spread positivity. And it's like, dude, this is what we do. I never put out a single anti-vegan video over 5 years of making, or like 4 years of making YouTube videos until now, when this stuff is so in your face and nobody else is talking about it. And the only other person I see talking about it is also this moral relativist who talks about how it's okay for cannibalism and eating babies.
Right.
So it's like, you know, I had this guy on the other day, Gattis, and he's a nice guy, really, really honest. But it was so funny because we ended up talking about his experience tasting human blood. And I'm like, whoa, you tasted human blood? He's a former vegan, like very, you know, almost fasted himself to death. He talks about how he tasted human blood. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like you sat around in a freaking circle, you drank it out of a cup or something? He's like, no, like somebody fell and they scratched themselves and I licked it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's still really weird. And so we had... You guys,
is he a vampire? Like one of these?
That's what I was trying to figure out. He makes these videos and he's like, the Illuminati, they are satanic and they eat humans, they eat babies, but you should, you know, they don't want you to do it because it gives them power, and they know if you do it, you will have power. It's this funny worldview.
Who is this guy? Who is this?
Gattis, SV3RIGE Sverige. Really interesting, nice guy. Came on my channel. It was the last hour was the conversation. I could send you a link and timestamp where we talked and where I had to kind of like, I mean, just like, all right, wow, we've got my Eat Meat Make Families channel, and this guy's bringing up I tried human blood. So I was like, what the hell? The next video he put out was called "Serial Killers Are the Real Heroes," and he talks about how serial killers are good because there's real no good and evil. And there's and serial killers are really are the bad guys in the Marvel world are really the good guys. And it was
he's
just
actually backing up this dumb vegan argument that if you eat meat you become a serial killer.
That's what I try to tell him, like, dude, you have the same worldview as Vegan Gains, and you criticize Vegan Gains, yet you guys really believe the same thing. And I told him, why don't you just promote veganism and make money from that and degenerate people, and you secretly eat meat? And he was like, well, I do it because pragmatically for me, I want meat to be available and I want to eat meat. So he was really honest about it, but it was a funny conversation. And it was just, you know, I'm always mulling these things over in my head, and this whole moral relativism thing is kind of where it all comes down to for me, it seems.
Right.
You know, I mean, how does one go about having the conversation about morality and stuff in a world where today almost everybody believes that, oh, it's just whatever you believe, bro. It's just there's no real right and wrong. Like, how does one go about it?
Right. I mean, this is, again, I think you hit the nail on the head at the beginning when you talked about people being adrift and lost and meaningless, having no meaning. Meaning is crucial to human beings. This is why, you know, from ancient times, human beings have told stories, because stories give meaning. You know, facts, objective, brute facts, they don't give meaning. They just are. So humans are storytelling creatures, and I think ultimately, you know, the only way to make sense of that is the existence of God and so forth. That I think leads us to how we know there is a God and so forth, is to ask the kinds of questions about meaning. How do we justify beliefs? How do we justify truth claims, etc.? It leads us directly to theism. I don't think there's any question about it. And you said, well, how do we demonstrate that? How do we know? Well, look at what happens when you don't. Look at the converse. Look at what happens when you adopt these idiotic worldviews, these stupid corporate created, government, social engineering created worldviews. They lead to your destruction. They are the seeds of your destruction.
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually the nature of our conversation. It's what's funny is most people, they actually end up agreeing, but at the same time, I think most people have a real, they hate the idea of. It usually comes down to, in our conversation, which it was a fascinating talk. He ended up saying, somebody asked the question in the chat, why do we create art? And he was like, oh, well, because we were created and we want to be creative. But then and then I said, oh, so you're saying we're made in the image of God? And he said, yeah. And he's like, yeah, but there doesn't have to be a God for there to be creation. And it was like, so people want it both ways a lot of the time. They're like, yeah,
exactly.
It's really funny, and it always comes down to that same place, that place of like, yeah, I agree with you, and I want the world to act moral, and I want everybody to behave in a way where they're not killing, raping, stealing, and pillaging. But
I also want to drink from somebody's jugular if I want to.
Yeah, and I don't want there to be an authority above me.
Yeah, I don't want any moral consequences for when I eat you.
Right, but you do look delicious, motherfucker.
When I put you on that spit and I turn you and roast you. Yeah.
But it was cool that he was so open and nice. That he was it was the only person you could have that conversation with, right? So you got to respect the fact that he said, yeah, it's totally incoherent. It doesn't really make sense, but this is how I feel and this is what I believe. And it was an interesting conversation in that regards, as he was like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. I'm just going to talk about it. So very, kind of psycho.
You interviewed Dracula, basically.
Yeah, the blonde Dracula, the Aryan Dracula. But he's funny. He does a lot of great anti-vegan videos, and I hadn't really seen much of his other stuff until right after I interviewed him. And then he puts out a video, "Serial Killers Are the Real Heroes," and it was a provocative title, but he was making the point that there is no morality, it's all just man-made.
Yes,
it's man-made. Yeah. Those are man-made. It's like, okay, then what you're saying is also man-made. But no.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I guess not. I guess there's no objective truth except that there is no objective truth. Yeah. You want to watch one more vegan street debate and see what would you say if you were standing on the sidelines and you could interrupt Earthling, Gelfling sure. Ed and the angry farmer. Let's see what's going on here.
Kill a cow. How will you kill a cow? You're a natural meat eater. How do you kill a cow? You're a natural meat eater, you don't need to use weapons. Lions don't use weapons, do they? Exactly, but they're natural meat eaters. But as a natural meat eater, yeah, exactly. But as a natural meat eater, you shouldn't need to use guns or knives because you could kill the animals yourself naturally. No, because if you were a natural meat eater, you're not the author. You take
all right. This is a common vegan argument. You seen this one? If you in nature, you can't go kill a cow with your mouth, and you can't slay a lion with your hands. Therefore, it's not natural.
Actually, you can. You can choke them.
You choke them out. Eddie Bravo could choke out a lion.
Eddie Bravo choking out a lion. How many people could we feed with his man bun if we fried his man bun?
It's a lot of collagen. It's a lot of let's see what else he says.
Lion on. Fight a lion. Who's the ultimate predator? No, but you can. But that's a device. Yes, but you are not.
So what about green juice? What about kale juice? How do you can't juice kale with your hands?
Yeah, right.
Natural meat eater. The word natural means nature. You're not a natural meat eater because you're using guns. But you don't have to eat both.
So he did the thing where it went from the argument trying to say that you aren't this, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this, to you don't have to. And again, it doesn't matter what I don't have to or don't have to do. It doesn't matter what's necessary or unnecessary, because the beginning of the argument was about what's objectively true or false, what you should or shouldn't do. You can't do this, you're not able to do this, you shouldn't do this, but you don't have to do this. Two different things.
And also, it's like, okay, so his argument would probably be, well, you don't have to be healthy. But I'd say, dude, I did a vegan diet. I almost killed myself. Like, I literally almost died. And there's so many people who email me all the time telling me that they had the same thing. They almost died from this crap. So maybe we do have to in order to be healthy and not be dependent on freaking Monsanto Cargill foods.
Right.
He's probably going to do that for 10 minutes. You know?
I have to. I
Let's fast
an
forward.
animal that doesn't want to die. Yeah, it is a moral justification. Yes. They don't have to.
There you go again. They don't have to.
I mean, by the way, don't we have it? Aren't these incisors? Aren't these predator teeth? This is an incisor.
Those are decorative. Darwin's natural selection gives us those to scare away other vegans. All right, give me my fruit, motherfucker. Those are actually proof of vampirism. Human vampirism is.
I'm gonna agree with your Count Chocula guest, and I'm gonna start biting bitches tonight. There's a bunch of old milfs out here, like 65-year-old milfs out by the pool. The old cow watering hole. I'm gonna start chomping on their necks tonight.
I think they're called gilfs, right? Technically. I mean, that's what when I look up VR porn, that I do VR gilf porn, and I get my goggles.
That depends. I mean, unless maybe for you, a gilf is like 90 or above.
Oh, okay.
Maybe for me,
a
milf is 65.
What year were you born? What year were you born, Jay? Just wondering.
What was that guy's name? I want to look him up.
Oh yeah, Gatis Sverige, SV3RIG.
No. The black guy that has the commune.
Oh, dude, yeah, my boy, Nature Boy, divine master teacher, Nature Boy. I mean, you could probably just look up God in Wikipedia. I mean, I guess that would probably come up. Picture of him.
There'll be a picture of him.
Yeah, with the 5-pointed head.
What? Carbon Nation?
Carbon Nation, dog. Carbon Nation. It was formerly Melanation, but they're diversifying their money base now.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been going at least 2.5 hours, I think. Maybe we wrap it up. We've been talking about all kinds of fun stuff. We talked about carbonation, master teacher, Nature Boy. We talked about the philosophical underpinnings of people's presuppositions that form their worldview. And we had a lot of fun. You had a couple cups of coffee. I probably drank 2 liters of water sitting here. And my eyes are straining from the computer. So, Jay, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find Mr. Jay Dyer's work?
Yeah, you can just subscribe to my YouTube channel. Do you care if I mirror this on my channel?
Go for it, man. Cool? Yeah, if you gotta mirror Nature Boy's channel. You gotta put a link for Nature Boy's cult and donations to the Nature Boy.
I'm gonna mirror all of his videos on my channel.
Yeah, yeah, man, go for it.
I'm gonna scene by scene reproduce every one of his videos with me, his role. I'm gonna have my afro wig on.
Yeah.
So you can just go to my YouTube channel, Jay Dyer. You can go to jaysanalysis.com, follow me on Twitter, whatever. And you can get my book, Esoteric Hollywood, Sex, Cults, and Symbols in Film, which is about movies and symbolism and interpretation and geopolitics and social engineering in film. You can get that on my website as well. And I guess that's the main sites.
Yes. Yeah, down in the description, and if you're watching on YouTube, there's a link to his website, Jay's Analysis. Highly suggest subscribing to his site, because you do a lot of these talks where it'll be like, well, the first hour is free on YouTube, and that's just, he goes very deep into this stuff. He cites sources, which in the so-called alternative media circus is so rare that people will cite anything. It's just all this pejorative and stuff, and whereas what Jay does is actually, however critical I am of the academic world and academia, I do like scholarly stuff. Like I studied history in university, and I love this stuff. So he's a true scholar of this stuff, and I've gotten a lot of books trying to figure out, all right, is Jay bullshitting me on this one? Is he really? And I'd end up buying the book and look at it. It's like, oh yeah, that's what Bertrand Russell does say, that the omnipotent power of science in his book. He quotes the omnipotent power. He talks about John P. Holdren in the Eco Science book. He definitely does talk about forcefully sterilizing people in the water supply, and it's just Jay does a great job of mapping these things out. And his theological stuff, though, I think is some of the really important stuff that a lot of people overlook, and when they're looking towards the more sexy stuff, like the sex, cults, and symbolism, like your book. But there's a lot deeper stuff that Jay talks about, and I really appreciate your site. And yeah, guys, check out jaysanalysis.com. And of course, you got to go out there, eat meat, and make families. And remember, guys, they're way more than what you eat. We're not just about creating some new diet cult out here. Yeah, you know, nutrition's important. What we eat is important, but ultimately what we believe about who we are, where we come from, and where we're going is going to inform all the decisions we make. And so have some fun. Get off of social media. Get out there in the real world. Go talk to your neighbors. Talk to real people. And, you know, eat some real food. Go eat some meat and make some families. Peace, guys. All right. They're going to be listening.